Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Chase Bonheg, co-founder, CEO of First Ignite, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by Mark Nolan from Georgia Tech University, who many of you know, and I know this is our largest audience for a webinar ever, so I know many of you are excited to learn from Mark today. I will go ahead and let Mark introduce himself, please, and then I'll give a high-level overview of what we're going to cover today.
Very good. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Nolan. I'm the inaugural Associate Vice President for Corporate Engagement here at Georgia Tech. That came with the closing of the Campus Office of Corporate Relations and the Campus Office of Industry Research in January of 2022. Prior to that, I was with Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh as Associate Vice President of Business Engagement and Strategy, and helped design the corporate engagement center that they have there. Very holistic office. Prior to that, 15 years at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, predominantly in the Office of Corporate Relations, where we also had a very holistic approach. And then I was there from 2001 to 2016, so learned a lot during that time. And then immediately prior to that, I was one of those stakeholders that you have on campus. I was at Johns Hopkins University, and I was tasked with taking a program that was on grant funding and finding ways to get it to self-sustainability. And we did that through subscription sales to other universities around the globe. Pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. And I've got Mark's told this story before publicly, but I think it's really important. So co-founder, CEO of First Ignite, started the company in 2019. In 2020, and our founding team comes from the University of Illinois. A good friend of both Mark and I's, John Corton, worked for the University of Illinois and said, you know, there's a guy you got to talk to, and it's Mark Nolan over at Carnegie Mellon. And this is actually a very pivotal moment in our company. At this time, we only worked with the Office of Technology Transfer on campus. And Mark sat us down virtually and said, tech transfer is great, important avenue of the university. And he taught us all of the other ways that a university can partner and generate revenue from companies. And without that lesson, First Ignite probably doesn't exist today, because the single use of just tech transfer really isn't large enough to sustain our organization. But when we start to think of philanthropic donations and core facilities and industry funded research and executive education, the opportunity is really important. So we're very thankful for Mark, and I know he has a lot of good stuff to share today. Let's get started on the evolution of corporate relations in higher education. Mark, you've worked in engagement roles at 4 major research institutions. What are some of the most significant changes you've seen over the years?
I think probably the most significant change that I've seen, and I'm seeing it accelerated today by the great number of universities that are contacting me, asking me about metrics, asking me about organizational structure. The biggest change I've seen really is this move away from just philanthropic engagement to much broader engagement. In fact, and the planning that we do in the office here at Georgia Tech, we focus entirely on student engagement, faculty engagement, research, professional and executive education, what I refer to as targeted solutions. It's a term that we came up with at the University of Illinois many years ago, which is essentially the fee-based utilization of labs and equipment on campus, licensing intellectual property, connecting with the startup community, co-location, and other forms of value that we can have with a company. And the prime thing there is that we don't talk about gifts, we talk about types of engagement. So another big thing I'm seeing a change in is people really getting credit for the types of broad partnerships that we can have with companies that at the end of the day generate dramatically more revenue for the campus than just focusing on one type of engagement, be it one type of engagement being philanthropic funding or even just research funding. Collectively, those two are the largest, but there are some fast growing areas as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Mark. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like then the university, from your perspective, are starting to shift from maybe a transactional relationship with a company, one and done, to a strategic partnership.
We absolutely have to, and Georgia Tech has experienced this, and I'm sure many of your guests today have experienced this. Many companies have been reducing the number of universities that they engage with. So if you're not focused on creating strategic partnerships, and what I mean is not just one person at the company engaged with one person or one unit on campus, you really need to create multiple connections within that company with multiple routes into the campus. And people have heard me talk, and my own people continually hear me talk about the difference between flowers and trees. Flowers are beautiful, but they tend to be annual, and they go away. Trees last for a long time, and there are multiple routes into the campus, and that's what we need to be focused on, because companies are reducing the number of universities that they're engaging with.
I love that. And so fewer companies or fewer campuses, but building deep roots makes a lot of sense. So what are the growing expectations that you're seeing both from universities and companies that create a strong foundation for these partnerships?
Well, it is not based on philanthropy. Philanthropy is a byproduct of a great relationship. So that what the company is looking for is actually returns on their many investments that they're making into the campus. How successful are they in recruiting students? How successful are they? I want to come back to the student thing as well. How successful are they are generating new knowledge and creating new opportunities with faculty? How responsive are we to meeting their needs, as opposed to going to them continually looking for an investment in something where we haven't really proved our worth to the organization? Universities now also have begun to see this, and I think that's why this office at Georgia Tech was created. Companies are demanding more value and more attention out of the partnerships that they have. And universities want to collect more value out of the relationships that they have. I think one of the big mistakes as corporate relations officers that we can make is sometimes being really too kind to companies. We don't know our own data very well. And what happens is that we're continually telling companies that they're a great partner. And what I've tried to put forth here at Georgia Tech is that let's stop saying a great partner unless they truly are a great partner. They're investing in multiple parts of the campus. They're conducting research. They're licensing our technology. They're participating in advisory boards. They're investing in startups. They're utilizing our upskilling abilities. A strong partner might be a company that spends a lot of time on campus, and they're also investing in multiple areas. An important partner may be a company that has a very notable brand name. It's very easy for that company to recruit on campus, so they're really not investing that much in the campus. They're important because of the great opportunities that they can provide the campus, but they may not be a great partner because we've been too kind to them, providing too much time to them, and we really need to consider that our customers, our clients, are not just external partners, but also really the internal stakeholders on the campus. Sorry to run on that. I get
No, that's
most.
great. And I've got two questions there. So on great partner too, because I actually love this, because we all chase, many offices are chasing, that wonderful brand name. But you've told me in the past, some of the largest financial relationships for your university has often come from companies you may not have even known existed before running into them.
Yeah, I've pointed out a few times that during my time at Carnegie Mellon, two of the largest corporate investments in, say, fiscal year 19, not only were they not Fortune 500 companies, neither company had 500 employees. In one case, it was a startup that was exceedingly well invested. by some larger companies that made a significant investment in campus, both in research and in philanthropic support. But in the other case, it was a SBA, a Small Business Administration eligible firm that was subawarding a very large sum of money into one of the campus's research centers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Speaking of which, because that creates kind of a difficult challenge for corporate relations officers. How to go find those? Let's talk about some of the key skills for corporate relations professionals. Obviously, you've seen a lot of things change. What do you think the top skills that professionals in corporate relations need to be working on developing today?
We need to be salespeople. We need to be business development professionals, and we need to stop being tour guides. I am pretty insistent on the fact that we want to make sure that when we bring a company here to Georgia Tech, that we have a very good understanding of who that company is and what investments they might be willing to make, because we do need to ensure that we're capturing value. I want people that can hear as a person is speaking other opportunities that might be able to come from this company. Should an interest that the company and a faculty member have come true, or should it not come true, we should always be listening for things that we can sell and engage with the company that may be completely different from the reason that we've connected with them. We need people that can translate research into industry relevant language. I think too often we spend time trying to make an appeal to a company that is, I'm thinking back to an experience I had at Illinois where the faculty member kept saying, we want to see how GE feels about these various elements. The GE executive was very polite. We left the room and he said, Mark, we're GE. We don't feel anything. And I took what he said and I said, sir, what if this faculty member had a way to take a negotiation that may typically take 2 years and either A, get to fast failure in a month, or B, have the company and all of the stakeholders aligned in this deal within say a 3-month period of time? How would GE feel about that? And the executive said, GE feel pretty good about that. Let's move forward. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So being a hunter, if you're going to track down small companies that might have a lot of money, it's kind of a consistent process. So that makes sense. Being able to translate the complex things happening on campus, also important. And then I've heard you say it before and hint at it here. Companies that visit campus aren't on a campus tour. There's their business meetings. And so ensuring that.
I absolutely, people that know me know that I absolutely despise the term visits. These are business meetings. That is a business, a company that we're interacting with, and we are essentially a business. We are an organization. These are business meetings. Visits can happen with individuals and with my great aunt and grandma, but not with companies.
That makes sense. And this one builds off our first topic in a little bit here, but and this goes off the holistic nature. Some campuses, I think it could be a challenge to, sometimes there's competition between even individual colleges. How do you bridge getting everybody on campus to be heading in the same direction on these corporate partnerships, rather than one college maybe saying, no, that's our partner and we're not letting them outside of this school? How do you navigate that?
Well, my response to this has always been corporate partners and prospects are first and foremost the property of the university. While I want to respect the relationships that individuals and individual units may have, we need to ensure that we're optimizing these relationships for the entire campus community. Why? Because companies are down selecting, and if we're not broad-based in that relationship, that company is eventually going to go away.
Yep.
Do I sound like I've said that 1,000 times?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yes. And I know I've heard it.
and that comfort in saying that, when I said it for the first time at Carnegie Mellon, uh, was easy because it came with the support of the president, the vice president for advancement, and the vice president for research. Right. So it needs to be a leadership mandate.
That makes a lot of sense. Moving on to kind of the pathways to partnership and how universities are collaborating with industry. I'm blessed enough to obviously have seen the wheel you discussed, but what are the main ways that universities are partnering with companies today?
Well, I think we've spent entirely too much time, and I want to make sure that I'm very careful how I say this. Our students are our most important asset. But this is not where companies are making their most significant investments. Unfortunately, and to their own disappointment, the recruiting organizations within companies do not have the funds that they would hope to have, to invest in students and student organizations. At Georgia Tech, where the vast majority of the investment comes is in sponsored research and sponsored other types of sponsored projects. In fact, in fiscal year 24, it was 74% of the total corporate investment. So sponsored research is I think, the one area that we're seeing just dramatic growth. According to the National Science Foundation's HERD report, the Higher Education Research and Development report, Georgia Tech's investments, Georgia Tech's research expenditures from funds provided by business, between fiscal year 15 and fiscal year 23, the most recent report, was up about 130%. And on the campus, just the Georgia Tech campus, our new industry-sponsored project awards, industry-sponsored research awards, are up about 40% year over year from last year. So sponsored research, definitely a growing area. I also think that we'll see more revenue coming from tech transfer and licensing deals, while the vast majority of funding from licensing will come probably from startups. I think we'll see an increase in a technology fee being incorporated into the sponsored research activity. So as industry sponsored research goes up, I think you'll see an increase in technology licensing fees. Growth area for us, really J curve growth over the past 2-3 years, has been in companies paying for customized professional and executive education. So this is, it might be on artificial intelligence, it might be on cybersecurity, it might be on safety in the workplace, but we're seeing just tremendous growth in that area as well. And then something that I'm committed to focusing on over the next 12 months, and that I actually had a conversation about just before coming to speak with you all, is that I think we're going to see a dramatic increase in the utilization of our core facilities, those labs and equipment that we have on campus that isn't being used at an optimal level, while at the same time federal funding and other funding sources may feel at risk. We need to make sure that we're looking for other forms of revenue that we can capture. And by the way, I think offering those core facilities, particularly to the businesses, the small and medium-sized businesses in our state, is not just revenue producing and recovering costs, it's also a public service. I think it's something that shows that we're interested in what the businesses in our states and regions are working on.
All of that is, yeah, that's incredible. I think one number we always look at is U.S. corporations are conducting $800 billion in R&D. and most of that will be done in their own walls, but even a small percentage is a significant amount of research funding. So excited about that. And then also, I think one of the things, especially when I think about core facilities, is not every company has $250,000 to invest in a sponsored research project. But if you get them on campus working with your faculty to run some pay-for-fee services of your core facilities, it seems like the natural gateway to larger partnerships as those companies grow and flourish. Have you seen that?
I have, I think sometimes, uh, um, uh, and actually my first job at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois from 2001 to 2006 was really about selling excess computing capacity on the supercomputers at the university. And many of those uses by industry of those supercomputers converted into industry-sponsored research agreements. Um, I think the challenge is that when the person that's answering the corporate relations officers that answering that inbound question, if it's not a gift or it's not for research, it may not meet their metrics. And the relationship managers here at Georgia Tech are measured on revenue from their portfolio. I don't care what kind of money it is. If in 1 year gifts are higher than research or higher than professional and executive education, that's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, they are measured on research funding, gift funding, professional and executive education funding, utilization of the labs and equipment, licensing, leasing, if a partner happens to be taking space on campus, or is utilizing our rooftops for antennas, and other forms of revenue, such as sports sponsorships. I don't care. Did the revenue from their portfolio go up? Right?
Nice.
Well, the challenge is for many of our colleagues at other campuses is they're measured on a limited number of income streams or types of funding, and that's to the detriment of the employee. It's also to the detriment of the relationship that university might have with that company.
One more question, and it's not one we had talked about, but I know so many of the quality relationships for the university come from relationships your faculty already have. Do you have programs in place to have your corporate relations officers digging into the faculty, trying to figure out who they're already working with? What's the approach there?
So we're continually monitoring the new awards and active sponsored projects that we have with campus, and what faculty are receiving funding of any type from a particular company. We have begun to migrate to a model where College of Engineering, for instance, here has a senior director of corporate engagement that is in my organization, Rick Hubler, and he has a portfolio of companies, but he also has a primary business client on campus, and that is the dean of the College of Engineering. Jesse Salmons is a director of corporate engagement. Jesse has a portfolio of companies, predominantly those types of companies that would be of interest to a business school. His primary client on campus is the dean of our College of Business. So we're doing both, right? And by being embedded with the colleges that way, embedded to an extent, they still have offices in my suite. You do get to know the people in the college a bit better. The other thing that we're doing is through our strategic initiatives group is trying to increase the level of communication that we have with our center directors, what we refer to as interdisciplinary research institutes here at Georgia Tech, and also the associate deans for research. I actually participate in the monthly associate deans for research meeting so that I could get updates on what's happening in the units as well.
Very helpful. Thank you. So we're going to move into kind of a lightning round for advice for the future. We've got a few minutes left here. what is one thing every university should start doing today?
Rip up the job descriptions they have, and expand the metrics as broadly as possible. Understand who your partners are through very thorough data investigation. And what I mean is that where are the data silos, and try to bring them all together so that when you're reporting to leadership, you're not just reporting on gifts, you're not just reporting on research, you're not just reporting on alumni in the company, you are reporting on every possible type of revenue and every type of opportunity that we might have with a particular company. Pursue, even if it's outside your area, expand your own knowledge about what it takes to participate in these types of deals that may be out of your swim lane. Because at the end of the day, if you bring a lead to tech transfer, hopefully your colleagues in tech transfer will acknowledge the fact that it was a corporate relations officer that brought them that lead. If you bring a lead of a corporate partner in economic development, a lead that a company is interested in being in the community, I'm sure that colleague on campus will recognize the fact that lead came from your conversation. So be broad. Yeah.
Very helpful. And what would be the most exciting trend you're seeing in corporate relations right now?
Artificial intelligence, without a doubt. To be able to, I have a lot of First Ignite seats, and the reason we have them is because it makes our jobs a lot easier to utilize the tool while we're speaking with faculty to very quickly come up with the names of companies that we think would be of interest. AI has really expanded our ability to identify companies that might be interested in speaking with faculty, rather than just thinking about the people that we know or the companies that we know. And then also, again, with First Ignite, what we're doing is that we have a primary point of contact in a company, but who is the primary contact that we might want to know in that company that might be interested in upskilling or sustainability or artificial intelligence or whatever the case may be. Using it to more quickly and more precisely identify errors in contractual agreements, I think is going to be huge. To speed the negotiation process by having an AI tool point out what has been changed and how that change might impact the meaning of an agreement. AI has probably been the most exciting thing since big data mining started in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just in corporate partnerships too. Olaf from your team, when we sat down at UIDP, he made an awesome phrase, which he said, the current group of students is the AI generation, and they're going to expect this in their personal, academic, and professional life. So he was talking about how the universities spin in to quickly get it integrated in all academics. So couple key takeaways. This was incredible. I think the importance of the role of being a hunter and going to get those new partners and sharing amongst campus, that we're not just looking for philanthropy, but what other value can we add to the company in exchange, I think creates a long-term partnership. And then tracking new KPIs, being rewarded on new partners brought in, revenue generated to other offices are all really important. I think Dan in the chat summed them up really nicely. Mark, we've got 1 minute here. We had over 100 people register, which is twice as many as ever before. As I told you, we're very excited and very appreciative of your time. This audience came to see you. What's your final thoughts to leave them with today?
These positions, and I may be retired before this happens, and I only say this because I'm pretty close to retirement. These positions are not going to be reporting in the future to development or advancement or to research. I really do think in the future these are going to be vice president, cabinet level positions because of the many ways that we can engage with companies. And I find that really, really exciting. I would love to get the A away from my VP because the value that corporations can bring if we're doing the right things is so important to the university.
Wonderful. I agree. I think it can be it already is a major pillar, but it could be the largest pillar of university partnerships in the future. So again, Mark Nolan, Georgia Tech, Illini as well. Thank you so much for your time today. As always, we appreciate it. We'll see you in Kansas City in a few months, I think. So
See you in Kansas City. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Cheers.